Hello and welcome to the next lecture, lecture number 39. And this is yet another lecture on the question of the encounter between Western system of medicine and indigenous systems, and particularly related to the response of the practitioners of indigenous system. And as we saw, one of it was actually one trend of it was the professionalization, or at least increasing efforts at professionalizing the system. And as part of that professionalization was the process of standardization and marketing, standardization of the practice, of the education, of the texts and various medical products. And one of the important milestones in the contest between indigenous systems and the colonial state-sponsored system of Western medicine, and one of the important assaults from the colonial side was the coming of the medical registration acts, the early part of the 20th century. In essence, what these acts meant was that so they gave legitimacy only to those who practice Western system of medicine. So all of them were required to register, and only they could register. So other forms, people practicing other forms could not register, and which meant that it carried all the other benefits and approvals that went with it. So, for instance, only they could sign as gazetted officers, for instance, in case of taking leave. So, the medical leave certificate could be signed only by those who are registered. By and large, so these were people who could be considered as proper registered practitioners, which meant all others, whatever may be the textual strength and whatever may be the hoary tradition of Ayurveda or Unani or Siddha or whatever, whoever did anything other than what was Western medical system, and by those who were registered. So, all others, the rest would become in one stroke quackery. So, this was a huge challenge, and therefore multi-pronged assault, particularly a direct threat to their very legal status and various rights of the local practitioners of indigenous systems. So, naturally, the Vaidyas and Hakims protested and sought either the withdrawal of the acts or that they be included. That is, the practitioners, indigenous practitioners, should also be brought under the ambit of proper registered medical practitioners. And again, they underlined the superiority of the indigenous practices, or at least the equality, compatible status of indigenous systems in relation to Western medicine. And this particular challenge added a new sense of urgency to the question of standardization of indigenous drugs, practices, curriculum, instruction, and all of that. So, the Ayurveda Sammelan, as part of the efforts in this direction, set up a standing committee called the Ayurveda Mahamandal. So, this was basically interested with the task of framing a standard structure for Ayurvedic training, as well as laying down clear norms, codes of conduct in terms of practice. And this in turn led to the starting of the Ayurveda Vidyapith to supervise standardized Ayurvedic education and to conduct all India standard examinations, so that standard certificates could be given based on which registration could be done. So, the Vidyapith also went about setting curriculum for all the Ayurvedic institutions, Pathsalas, prescribing the relevant books and also publishing them, and awarding specific degrees like Ayurveda Visharad, meaning master of Ayurveda, or Ayurveda Acharya, teacher. It revised the quality and raised the quantity of the syllabus of all the subjects for the examinations that it was conducting in a very common way at an all India level across different centers. Like we have some all India public exams like civil service exams and entrance exams these days in different parts across the country. And committees were appointed to make the course structure more practical as well as more professional. On the one hand, all the Ayurvedic institutions in India were exhorted to adopt the standardized syllabus and exams which were proposed by the Vidyapith. And at the same time, even as this tightening was happening, so there were voices for openness towards Western medicine and for assimilation of aspects of Western medicine into Ayurveda. So this process of tightening did not close the doors to Western medicine or any other forms or directions from where something useful can be added. But on the other hand, there were counter voices which were concerned about the honor and distinctiveness. They feared that the efficacy of Ayurveda would be lost if those kinds of compromises and syncretic efforts were made. So those are the purists. And coming to Unani, there were similar efforts at standardization, tightening by Hakim Ajmal Khan and his Ayurvedic and Unani TB College. So he was also open to assimilation from Ayurveda or from Western medicine, along with his concern for standardization of texts and practices and products. Similarly, in the case of Siddha, so especially this happened in the context of the formation of the Usman Committee in the 1920s, and this collection and translation and ordering of texts happened especially in relation to the fear of the domination of Sanskrit-based texts in the Tamil-speaking area. So the Tamil-speaking practitioners in the Madras Presidency, so they showed double enthusiasm and care to bring together the what they thought were proper Tamil texts, which need to be resurrected and given their proper place without being crushed under the juggernaut of Sanskrit within this process of revitalization. So that's how Siddha acquired its own identity in the first place and also professional standardized identity. So similarly, with regard to drugs, there were concerted efforts to standardize the drugs as well. Production, unlike before, was done under strict supervision by qualified people, most preferably by the practitioners themselves, or even if they are employing subordinates, so they had to be very carefully chosen. And so they were very open to using modern methods, modern technology, factory methods, and storage methods, bringing in shelf medicines as opposed to earlier days of customized medicine prepared on the spot for the particular patient. And so in the process, there was a transparent declaration of the virtues and uses. So there, as in the Western pharmaceutical case, so everything was put there. Unlike the earlier practice, where the patient goes to the practitioner, and of course, most of it may be actually done in front of the patient. So customized medicine made. Mixing together various ingredients, herbs and potions and all that, but so it may not be very transparent, clearly told, or for future reference it's not there. So what are the actual ingredients and what are the purposes and virtues? So now all of this was there. Perhaps one suspects they became too transparent and too commercial in this whole process, because one sees a flood of advertisements, especially in the vernacular medium, the local newspapers, national newspapers, periodicals carried both visual and verbal print advertisements. That is, they're not only using words, attractive words, catchy phrases and all that, but also like very colorful, not colorful, but very attractive photographs or diagrams. And of course, in course of time, when it was available, so color was also introduced. So all of this, in fact, showed considerable entrepreneurial skills. So though these were practitioners, these are medical practitioners, but apart from their medical skills, because the exigency of the situation demanded that they are more than mere practitioners. On the one hand, they already had to be producers. Of course, they could also employ, and especially when they were producing in industrial mode, there would be others who would have been employed, not as with the same kind of expertise as them, the text, but nevertheless, so they were already involved in production. So now so many other qualities came apart from their medical qualities. So they also displayed commendable use of communication techniques, both through print and through other means. So today we are talking about marketing strategies with degrees for them. So in fact, so we have people finishing their main course in say engineering or even medicine, and then taking extra degree in business management to learn all these things and become successful, especially in these kinds of activities. It was really striking. So these people were already under the weight of all the kind of very negative depictions, fighting a very serious battle. So apart from the epistemological aspects of it, trying to clear the ground and trying to tighten things and those kinds of challenges and framing the syllabus and setting proper institutions, all that. So they also had to, so that itself was considerable leadership. But apart from that kind of leadership, knowledge level leadership, they also had to show all these other kinds of techniques, ranging from communication to marketing to business acumen. So in all of these things, they were very skillfully using local cultural idioms. So this is something which we have to keep in mind sometimes. So there's a wrong belief that resort to tradition or religious symbolism actually runs counter to some of these modernization, standardization processes, but actually it is possible to bring a fruitful marriage between aspects of tradition and this kind of standardization. And very interestingly, the use of cultural idioms was done even by practitioners of Western medicine or those who were marketing Western medicines. So they in fact were advertising in English as well as in the vernacular media. So they started initially targeting the English educated Indian customers, and then they widened the net. And when they did that, so they had to also resort to vernacular languages and a wider range of periodicals. And it is there they also felt that apart from using the vernacular languages, it's also very smart to use some of the local symbols, idioms, and broader cultural elements. So like use of local gods, playing on family sentiments like a caring mother, the virtue of having a male son, and or using powerful words from a particular language like Sanskrit, words like virya, virility and things like that. So, so these techniques now were even more fruitfully used by the indigenous systems, and of course they had greater resonance when they did it, given the spirit of nationalism or religious revivalism also. So they sought to instill in the consumers the sense of their own participation and contribution to the nation by buying these indigenous products. So that very act of patronizing these goods was itself one small kind of contribution by the people. So, so these movements effectively used salespersons who furthered the cultural and nationalistic association by using other techniques. So going beyond the print medium and photos and pamphlets and other things. So they also, when they actually went to the people, so they used local songs, local tales, myths, and traditions and local tunes, so that it became even more culturally embedded. So all of these things not only enhance the place of Indian drugs and drug manufacturers, and not only did it enhance their profits, so all of these also raise the profile and the status of the practitioners also. In fact, the practitioners also joined the this flood of advertisements and very happily advertise your practice. Apart from, some of them had their own products apart from advertisement for their products. So they advertise their practice, their name, their own self titles, and very broad descriptions of their skills and whatever they had to offer in terms of curing methods as well as whatever products they had. And they also followed other marketing techniques like giving free calendars with their names very prominently written, or the names of the clinics, along with photographs of people. Like we have some calendars now with, say, Gandhi's photo or Michael Jackson's photo. So like that. The photographs of eminent personalities, and also photographs of gods and goddesses. Like we have, for instance, jewelry shops giving you calendars with pictures of Lord Krishna or other such things which you would cherish in your house. And so that name is always, so even if you want to forget, you can't forget. So every morning you look up at the calendar, there you see this Ayurvedic clinic and you're reminded of its presence and what it can offer you. And also another way of doing it is to publish and freely give religious booklets, and then on the back of it, freely distributed by courtesy of such and such pharmacy or clinic. So these are different ways, and the advertisement for the drugs and the advertisement for the practitioners, they fed each other very fruitfully. So because of the increasing appeal and the wider presence of the drugs, the practitioners also benefited, and the practitioners, through their advertisements and through the prescription of this, they also contributed to the wider spread of the products too. And the spirit of commercialization and advertisements also spread to related fields like birth control, virility, and general maintenance of very shapely and strong bodies. So, for instance, the newspapers and periodicals started having information on contraceptives in the vernacular newspapers starting from about the 1930s, and ever new methods of contraception and all kinds of technological innovations, including rubber condoms and whatever was the latest, was all advertised in the vernacular medium. So similarly, advertisements for all kinds of aphrodisiacs, various potions and solutions promising male potency or curing impotency, which was a very big social cultural issue. So, solutions in both the figurative and literal sense, a solution to the problem through some kind of these solutions and magic potions. And also there was a cultural concern about producing male child. So there were also some kind of solutions, some kind of prescriptions, those kinds of things. These are all openly advertised, and similarly advertisements and books on marital love, sexual hygiene, the bliss of wedded life, and also on birth control. So they were, on the one hand, these were advertisements, but on the other hand, they were also, educational. So having proper kind of sexual practices and education about the need to control population through birth control. So all of these books had very vivid illustrations of the human anatomy. So these kinds of materials were made available on the roads and railway stations, so which is something we can see even today. And if they are not there available on the roads and railway stations, if they have to be only procured from specific locations, bookshops, so that also reaching those kinds of places, specific places, was also now facilitated by increase in transport facilities like trains or trams, buses across the towns. But one of the problems is that all of these were focused mostly on men and male bodies and their desires, so not much on women and their sexuality. So there was gender disparity, and it also speaks about the male domination. So male domination, gender domination expresses itself in different ways. So this is one of the ways of disparity showing itself. So such growing and vibrant presence in the market for the indigenous medicines and alternatives indicates new confidence and the ability to provide a credible contest with the Western medical practice in the light of the weight of the state being by and large behind the Western system, and in the light of all those kinds of characterizations and marginalizations. And of course, so as we keep saying, all of this was to a great extent aided by the overall spirit of nationalism. And so these processes definitely contributed to standardization in a considerable way, but we should also bear in mind that the same avenues of publicity provided for cropping of dubious cures and medicaments. So now that this avenue was open for advertising in very attractive ways, so so this is not only open for only legitimate purposes, but even quacks could also use it. And also the vibrancy and this kind of commercialization, standardization of these at least the leading systems like Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani did not on the other hand erode the continued presence of any number of other folk practices, traditional tribal healing practices, or practices centered around temples and mosques or other such religious institutions. So these options very much continue to exist in the midst of all this, and even they also borrowed these kinds of institutions or setups also borrowed the ways of reasoning from these systems which we are trying to standardize, and also borrowed some of their culture, just as these standardizing systems borrowed from Western medicine and its culture. So, for instance, they very logically reasoned. So some of the temple or mosque-based curing centers. So they reason that the medical practitioners in clinics, so whether they are Western system or say Ayurveda or any of the indigenous standardized systems, so they said they could address only those kinds of ailments which are physical and ailments arising out of this world, worldly or physical reasons. So they very confidently said that those people do not know about the kind of ailments caused by supernatural or spiritual forces, so which are not of this world. So these are the other world of factors of the other world. So they felt confident that so they are experts in this. So they are zero. These clinic-based medical practitioners are zero with regard to this. So this involved belief in higher power and the power of prayer and the need for devotion. So these were all central to many such systems and healing processes. But the fact that they were coming to these temples or mosques or other religious institutions did not necessarily discourage people from resorting to Western or other systems of medicine for the usual physical diseases. And in most cases, even for those kinds of diseases, they would come here to these kinds of centers after exhausting all the possibilities in the mainstream possibilities, and having spent a considerable money in some of the processes, including various testings and other things. And the resort to these kinds of institutions is also based on a sense of cultural rooting and belonging, in the sense that it is not very alienating. So religion is anyway something to which they have always been belonging, and the people there giving that care or cure to them, so they give that extra sense of belonging. So there was this smooth trading upon walking between different kinds of options, so without much heartburn. Similarly, there were many tribal traditions also which survived in spite of all of these things. So they based on tribal beliefs, local tribal deities. So they were using local forest mountain herbs or various ores, plant, mineral, metal and animal extracts. So they had their own medical material. And so one thing to be noted is that so with the coming of colonialism and its new technologies and forms of transport and communication, so the isolation that used to be there, say a few centuries before, that was not the same. So the isolation of these tribes in the hills or hinterlands was broken. So wherever they were, for instance, if they were in the hills, the colonial states' arms reached there through various of its projects, like setting tea plantations or sanatoria or whatever. So their isolation was considerably broken. So how does it matter in the medical sense? So from their point of view, so they could also go out, and so their systems now included newer ingredients apart from what we mentioned in the earlier point, using local herbs and ores. So they were able to go, willing to go beyond and use newer ingredients from these other areas, from which either people came to them or to which people from there could now go using the new openings of transport. And they also borrowed, so even some of these traditional tribal systems also borrowed systems of and culture from others, like production related or marketing related systems, attributes from the Western pharmaceutical or medical systems, just as the standardizing Ayurvedic and Unani systems were doing. So they could do this at least at the cottage level. So all of this goes to show that the indigenous medical systems or the contest was not some kind of a uniform, totally organized, monolithic process. So a lot of nuances and a lot of internal struggles, internal marginalizations and all that. So on that note, we will close this lecture. Thank you.